Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a shocking story coming out of Russia, something that's sending ripples through the Kremlin itself. Vladimir Putin has just been hit with an unexpected betrayal, not from foreign powers or opposition figures, but from one of his own loyal propagandists. For years, these state media voices have defended every move of the Kremlin, but now one of them has broken ranks, admitting something Putin has long denied: that Ukraine may actually be on its way to victory. This revelation isn't just embarrassing for Moscow, it's exposing cracks in the entire foundation of Russian propaganda. For more than 2 years, Russia has maintained the illusion that its so-called special military operation was progressing according to plan. State media, under tight Kremlin control, repeated the same narrative. Russia was advancing, Ukraine was collapsing, and the West was wasting its time supporting Kiev. But that illusion is crumbling fast. In recent weeks, a high-profile Russian TV personality, someone who once proudly called Ukraine a non-existent state, publicly admitted that the war is not going as planned and that Ukraine's resistance is far stronger than anyone in Moscow expected. This admission isn't just a slip of the tongue. It's a confession that years of propaganda have been nothing more than smoke and mirrors. Russian citizens who have relied on state TV to understand what's happening on the front lines are now questioning everything. If the same voices who told them Russia was winning are now conceding that Ukraine might prevail, what does that say about the credibility of the Kremlin itself? The propagandist's comments have sparked outrage among Russia's elite circles. Reports from inside Moscow suggest that the Kremlin is furious and scrambling to contain the damage. They've reportedly ordered all major media outlets to avoid discussing the statement or even referencing it. But in the age of social media, censorship is no longer absolute. The clip has spread online like wildfire, shared by independent journalists, Telegram channels, and even Russian soldiers who are beginning to lose faith in the cause. It's becoming increasingly clear that the morale problem within Russia is not limited to the battlefield. It's spreading through the media, the government, and even among ordinary citizens. Soldiers returning from the front tell stories that directly contradict the official line. They speak of poor logistics, collapsing morale, and heavy casualties. Meanwhile, Ukraine, with Western support, continues to strike deep into Russian-held territories, destroying supply depots, command centers, and infrastructure that Russia can barely afford to lose. This betrayal by a propagandist is symbolic of something much larger: a turning point in the information war. For so long, Putin has controlled the narrative, shaping how millions of Russians see the world. Now that narrative is slipping out of his hands. The fact that someone from within his inner circle of media loyalists has dared to acknowledge Ukraine's resilience shows how desperate and divided things have become. Inside Russia, even those who once idolized Putin are starting to ask uncomfortable questions. Why has the war dragged on for so long? Why are Russian troops dying in such massive numbers for so little gain? Why are sanctions crippling the economy while the promised victory remains out of reach? These questions are growing louder, especially as ordinary Russians feel the effects of the war in their daily lives. Rising prices, shortages, and the loss of countless young men sent to the front lines with inadequate training and outdated equipment. The betrayal didn't come out of nowhere. In recent months, several pro-Kremlin commentators have shown signs of frustration. Some have cautiously criticized the Russian Ministry of Defense, hinting at incompetence and corruption. Others have complained that they were misled about the war's progress. But this time, the statement went further. It crossed the ultimate red line by suggesting that Ukraine might actually win. That's not just dissent. That's heresy in Putin's Russia. The Kremlin has built an entire ideological fortress around the idea that Russia is destined to prevail against what it calls the collective West. To admit otherwise is to challenge Putin's core narrative. Yet the more the war drags on, the harder it becomes to maintain the illusion. Russia has lost hundreds of thousands of soldiers, thousands of tanks, and entire columns of armored vehicles. Cities that were once promised to be captured in days remain under Ukrainian control. In Kiev, officials have reacted with restrained satisfaction. They see this moment as proof that their resistance is working, not just militarily but psychologically. Every time a Russian figure admits the truth, it chips away at the propaganda wall that protects Putin's regime. Ukrainian intelligence has long argued that the Kremlin's biggest vulnerability isn't on the battlefield, but in its control of information. If that control breaks, the entire system could begin to unravel from within. Meanwhile, Western analysts are paying close attention. They say that internal dissent in Russia's propaganda machine could be a precursor to deeper divisions within the political elite. When propagandists lose faith, oligarchs and military leaders may not be far behind. These are people who have built their wealth and power on loyalty to Putin, but loyalty in Russia has always been conditional. It lasts only as long as the leader looks strong. Once he appears weak or vulnerable, that loyalty evaporates. This growing strength has made Sweden a respected voice in Europe's security discussions. It's not a large country, but its moral clarity and firm stance have earned it global respect. When Sweden says Russia must leave Ukraine, it's not just another diplomatic statement. It's a demand backed by action, unity, and courage. In recent international summits, Swedish officials have been very clear. Peace talks can only begin once Russia withdraws its forces completely. There can be no compromise on Ukraine's sovereignty. This aligns Sweden with the rest of NATO and the European Union, which have made it clear that any peace deal that rewards Russian aggression is unacceptable. Sweden believes justice must come first, war crimes must be prosecuted, and Ukraine must be rebuilt stronger than before. Sweden's foreign policy is now deeply intertwined with the defense of democracy. It's no longer just about protecting its borders, but about standing for principles that define Europe's identity. The Swedish public supports this approach wholeheartedly. Surveys show that the majority of Swedes believe that supporting Ukraine is not only the right thing to do morally, but also strategically essential for long-term peace in the region. The transformation of Sweden's role in the world is extraordinary. A nation that once relied on diplomacy and neutrality now finds itself preparing for collective defense, contributing to European deterrence, and standing as a symbol of moral strength. Sweden's message is being heard far beyond Europe. From Washington to Tokyo, nations are recognizing that this is a defining moment in global history. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has united the democratic world in ways the Kremlin never expected. Countries like Sweden, once cautious and reserved in their diplomacy, are now on the front lines of political and moral leadership. Their voices carry weight because they come from nations that understand both the cost of war and the price of freedom. The Swedish government has also emphasized the need for long-term support for Ukraine. It's not just about sending weapons. It's about rebuilding institutions, supporting refugees, and helping Ukraine move closer to European integration. Sweden has been one of the strongest advocates for Ukraine's EU membership, seeing it as the ultimate guarantee of stability and prosperity in Eastern Europe. Meanwhile, Moscow continues to try to intimidate Sweden with threats and propaganda, but those efforts are failing. Sweden's intelligence agencies have strengthened their cyber defenses, exposing Russian disinformation campaigns and educating the public about how to identify fake news. The Swedish people have become more aware of how Russia tries to manipulate narratives, and they've responded with resilience and truth. At the same time, Sweden's cultural and humanitarian contributions have been immense. Swedish organizations have provided shelter, food, and medical care to thousands of Ukrainian refugees. Schools and universities have opened programs to help displaced students and academics continue their education. These acts of kindness have strengthened the bond between Swedes and Ukrainians, creating a sense of shared struggle and solidarity. In the bigger picture, Sweden's message to Russia is not just political, it's moral. It's about saying that nations cannot simply rewrite borders by force, that human life cannot be treated as expendable, and that freedom cannot be silenced by bombs. Every word Sweden speaks now carries the weight of history and conviction. As the war continues, Sweden's role will only grow. Its entry into NATO marks a new era, one where Sweden contributes directly to collective defense and deterrence. The Baltic Sea is becoming a strategic focus, and Sweden's military and intelligence capabilities will be key to ensuring stability in that region. This cooperation will make it much harder for Russia to threaten its neighbors. In Parliament, Swedish lawmakers continue to approve new aid packages for Ukraine, reaffirming that their support is unwavering. Political parties from across the spectrum, left and right, have united on this issue, showing that defending democracy is not about ideology, it's about humanity. This unity is one of Sweden's greatest strengths. The message from Stockholm to Moscow could not be clearer. The world will not accept occupation, war crimes, or lies. Russia must get out of Ukraine and allow the people of Ukraine to decide their own future. Sweden's voice adds moral authority to that demand, and it resonates because it comes from a nation that has always valued peace, but now understands that peace requires strength. Every speech, every aid shipment, every diplomatic action from Sweden now carries the same spirit, a commitment to justice. The world is changing, and Sweden is showing what it means to adapt with integrity. While the war continues, Sweden remains steadfast, standing shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine and sending one unified message: enough is enough.